The hospital room felt colder than usual as Destiny Thompson held her 3-day-old son close to her chest. Baby Elijah was perfect, 10 tiny fingers, 10 tiny toes, and the sweetest little face she had ever seen. But the joy of holding her firstborn was overshadowed by the empty chair beside her bed where her husband should have been sitting. Her phone buzzed against the hospital table. Robert's name flashed on the screen, and for a moment, hope filled her heart. Maybe he was calling to say he was on his way. Maybe he had finally come to his senses about missing the birth of their child. "Hello," she answered, trying to keep the hurt out of her voice. "Destiny, look, I can't make it to pick you up today." Robert's voice came through the speaker, distant and cold. "Something came up at work. You're gonna have to find another way home." The words hit her like a slap across the face. She had just given birth to their son 3 days ago, alone, because Robert claimed he couldn't leave his construction job. Now he was telling her he couldn't even pick them up from the hospital. "Robert, I just had a baby. Our baby. How am I supposed to get home with a newborn?" Her voice cracked despite her efforts to stay strong. "I don't know, call your grandmother or something. Look, I gotta go. We'll talk when you get home." The line went dead. Destiny stared at the phone in disbelief, tears streaming down her face. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. When she imagined bringing her first child home, she pictured her husband's proud smile, his gentle hands helping her into the car, his excited chatter about their future as a family. Instead, she was alone in a sterile hospital room, holding their son while he dismissed them like they were an inconvenience. Nurse Patricia knocked softly and entered the room. She was a kind woman in her 50s with gentle eyes that had seen too many situations like this one. "Everything okay, honey?" she asked, noting the tears on Destiny's cheeks. "My husband can't pick us up," Destiny whispered, her voice barely audible. "He says he's too busy with work." Nurse Patricia's expression softened with understanding and something that looked like anger on Destiny's behalf. She had been working in the maternity ward for 15 years and had seen her share of absent fathers, but it never got easier to witness. "Do you have someone else you can call?" she asked gently. Destiny nodded, wiping her tears. "My grandmother. She's been asking to come see the baby anyway." As she dialed Grandma Rose's number, Destiny couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Robert had been distant throughout her pregnancy, working late more often, taking phone calls in other rooms, being secretive about his whereabouts. She had chalked it up to nerves about becoming a father, but now she wondered if there was something more. "Grandma Rose?" she said when the familiar warm voice answered. "It's Destiny. I need your help." Within an hour, her grandmother arrived at the hospital like an angel in a floral dress and comfortable shoes. Rose Thompson was 72 years old but moved with the energy of someone half her age. She had raised Destiny after her parents died in a car accident when she was 12, and she had been the strongest, most loving presence in her life ever since. "Where is that no-good husband of yours?" Grandma Rose asked as she carefully took baby Elijah into her arms. Her voice was calm, but Destiny could see the fire in her eyes. "He had to work," Destiny lied, not ready to admit the full truth even to herself. Grandma Rose gave her a look that said she knew there was more to the story, but she didn't press. Instead, she focused on her great-grandson, cooing softly and marveling at his tiny features. "This baby is beautiful, Destiny. He looks just like you did when you were born." She paused, studying his face carefully. "He's got your daddy's nose, though, and those long eyelashes from my side of the family." For the first time in days, Destiny smiled genuinely. Watching her grandmother hold her son felt right in a way that nothing else had since Elijah was born. The discharge process took another 2 hours, filled with paperwork, instructions from Dr. Martinez about caring for the baby, and scheduling follow-up appointments. Through it all, Grandma Rose stayed by Destiny's side, asking questions and taking notes like the former schoolteacher she was. As they prepared to leave the hospital, Destiny felt a mix of emotions. She was excited to take her son home and start their new life together, but she was also terrified of what she might find when she got there. Robert's behavior had been so strange, so unlike the man she married 2 years ago. "You ready, baby girl?" Grandma Rose asked, pushing the wheelchair as hospital policy required. Destiny looked down at Elijah sleeping peacefully in her arms. Whatever was waiting for her at home, she would face it. She had to. She was a mother now, and that meant being strong for her son no matter what. "I'm ready," she said, though her heart was pounding with uncertainty. The ride home in Grandma Rose's old Buick was quiet except for the soft sounds of the baby and the gospel music playing softly on the radio. Destiny stared out the window at the familiar streets of her neighborhood in Atlanta, wondering why everything looked different now. The trees seemed darker, the houses more distant, and the sky grayer than she remembered. As they turned onto her street, Destiny noticed an unfamiliar red car parked in her driveway behind Robert's truck. Her stomach dropped. She didn't recognize the car, and Robert hadn't mentioned having company. "Whose car is that?" Grandma Rose asked, voicing the question that was already racing through Destiny's mind. "I don't know," Destiny replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Something cold settled in her stomach as they pulled up to the house. The curtains were drawn, which was unusual for the middle of the day, and she could see shadows moving behind the living room window. Grandma Rose parked on the street and turned off the engine. "You want me to come in with you?" Destiny was about to say yes when she saw something that made her blood freeze. Through the small gap in the curtains, she could see Robert's silhouette, and he wasn't alone. There was another figure with him, someone smaller with long hair. As she watched in horror, she saw them embrace. Her husband, the father of the baby she held in her arms, was in their living room with another woman while his wife and newborn son were being discharged from the hospital. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Everything she thought she knew about her life, her marriage, her future, suddenly felt like a lie. The man she had loved and trusted had not only abandoned her during the birth of their child but was entertaining another woman in their home while she was gone. "Destiny?" Grandma Rose's voice seemed to come from far away. "Baby, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." Destiny couldn't speak. She couldn't move. She could only stare at her house, their house, where her husband was betraying everything they had built together. The happy ending she had imagined for her little family was crumbling before her eyes, and she didn't know how she was going to pick up the pieces. But as baby Elijah stirred in her arms and made a soft cooing sound, something fierce and protective awakened in her chest. Whatever was happening in that house, whatever Robert had done, she would not let it destroy her son's future. She would find a way to make this right, not just for herself, but for the innocent child who deserved so much better than this. The real question was, what was she going to do about it? Destiny sat frozen in the passenger seat, her heart hammering against her ribs as she watched the shadows move behind her living room curtains. Baby Elijah slept peacefully in her arms, completely unaware that his world was about to change forever. "Destiny, talk to me. What's going on?" Grandma Rose's voice was firm but gentle, the same tone she had used when Destiny was a child and afraid of thunderstorms. "I think..." Destiny's voice cracked. She cleared her throat and tried again. "I think Robert is with another woman." The words hung in the air between them like a toxic cloud. Saying it out loud made it real in a way that just thinking it hadn't. Grandma Rose followed Destiny's gaze to the house and her jaw tightened. At 72 years old, Rose had seen enough of life to know heartbreak when she saw it, and she had zero tolerance for men who abandoned their families. "You sure about what you're seeing?" she asked, though her tone suggested she already believed it. "I saw them hug through the window," Destiny whispered. "And whose car is that?" Robert never mentioned having company today. As if summoned by their conversation, the front door of the house opened. Robert stepped out onto the porch, and behind him was a woman Destiny had never seen before. She was tall and slim with honey-colored skin and long braids that fell past her shoulders. She was wearing a dress that was too nice for a casual afternoon visit, and when Robert leaned down to kiss her goodbye, Destiny's worst fears were confirmed. The woman walked to the red car in the driveway, giving Robert a flirty wave before getting in and driving away. Robert watched her go with a smile on his face that Destiny hadn't seen directed at her in months. "That son of a..." Grandma Rose started, then caught herself. "That man has lost his mind." Destiny felt like she was drowning. The last 3 days in the hospital, she had been worried about Robert's absence, making excuses for him in her mind. Maybe he was scared about being a father. Maybe work really was that demanding. Maybe he was planning some kind of surprise for when she came home. She never imagined this. "What am I supposed to do?" Destiny asked, tears streaming down her face. "I just had his baby. We have a mortgage together. I thought we were building a life." "First thing you're gonna do is wipe those tears," Grandma Rose said firmly. "Then you're gonna march in there and demand some answers. And I'm coming with you. But the baby? The baby needs to see his mama being strong. He needs to learn early that Thompson women don't back down from a fight." Destiny looked down at Elijah, who had opened his eyes and was staring up at her with that unfocused newborn gaze. Something about his innocent trust gave her strength. She had carried this child for 9 months, brought him into the world, and she would protect him from anything that might hurt him, including his own father's bad choices. "Okay," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Let's go." Grandma Rose got out of the car and came around to help Destiny with the baby. Together, they walked up the front path that Destiny had traveled 1,000 times before, but somehow felt foreign now. Robert was still standing on the porch when they approached. When he saw them, his expression shifted from the relaxed smile he'd worn while saying goodbye to his visitor to something guarded and almost annoyed. "You're home early," he said as if that were somehow a problem. "Early?" Destiny couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Robert, I was discharged today. I called you 3 days ago to tell you when to pick us up." "Yeah, well, like I said, I had things to handle." "Like entertaining your girlfriend?" The words came out before Destiny could stop them. Robert's face went pale, then red. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me, Robert. I saw her. We saw her." Destiny gestured to her grandmother. "Who was that woman?" "That's my business." The casual dismissal in his voice was like a physical blow. Destiny had expected denial, anger, even guilt. She hadn't expected him to act like she didn't have a right to know. "Your business." Grandma Rose stepped forward, her small frame somehow intimidating despite her age. "Son, let me tell you something. When you married my granddaughter, her business became your business and your business became hers. That's how marriage works. With all due respect, Mrs. Rose, this is between me and Destiny." "Respect." Grandma Rose's voice rose. "You want to talk about respect? Where was the respect when you left your wife to give birth alone? Where was the respect when you refused to pick up your wife and newborn son from the hospital? And where was the respect when you had another woman in the house you share with your family?" Robert looked uncomfortable but not ashamed, which somehow made it worse. "Look, things change. People change. Destiny and I, we're not the same people we were when we got married." "So you're having an affair," Destiny said flatly. "I'm exploring my options." The coldness in his voice made Destiny's knees weak. This wasn't the man she had fallen in love with. This wasn't the man who had proposed to her on the beach in Savannah, who had cried when she told him she was pregnant, who had promised to love her forever. "Your options?" she repeated. "Robert, I just gave birth to your son." "Your son? Look at him." She held Elijah up slightly, but Robert barely glanced at the baby. The lack of interest in his own child was almost as devastating as the affair. "I never said I was ready to be a father," he said. "Maybe this whole thing was a mistake." The words hit Destiny like a physical blow. She staggered backward, and Grandma Rose immediately stepped closer to support her. "A mistake." Destiny's voice was barely a whisper. "Our marriage is a mistake? Our son is a mistake." "I didn't say that." "Then what are you saying, Robert?" "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've already made your choice. You chose that woman over your family. You chose your options over your responsibilities." For a moment, Robert looked almost regretful. But then his face hardened again. "Maybe I did. Maybe we both need to face reality here." "The reality is that you're a coward," Grandma Rose said quietly. "And my granddaughter deserves better than a coward." Robert's face flushed with anger. "You don't know anything about our relationship. I know that real men don't abandon their wives when they're giving birth. I know that real men don't bring other women around their family home. And I know that my granddaughter is worth 10 of you on your best day." Destiny felt a surge of gratitude for her grandmother's fierce protection, but she also felt something else, a growing strength she didn't know she had. Looking at Robert now, seeing him for what he really was, she realized that maybe this wasn't the worst thing that could have happened. Maybe this was her chance to build the life she and Elijah actually deserved. "Robert," she said, her voice clear and strong, "I want you to leave." "What?" "You heard me. Pack your things and leave. If you've already made your choice, then make it all the way. But you don't get to have both. You don't get to keep me as a backup plan while you explore your options. Destiny, you can't just kick me out of my own house." "Our house," she corrected. "And yes, I can. If you want to be with someone else, go be with someone else. But don't do it under the same roof as your son." Robert looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Destiny's face must have convinced him she was serious. He stood there for a long moment as if waiting for her to back down. When she didn't, he shrugged. "Fine. Maybe that's for the best anyway." He walked past them into the house, and Destiny heard him moving around, presumably packing. She stood on the porch holding her son, feeling like the ground had shifted beneath her feet. Her marriage was over. Her life was falling apart. But somehow she also felt freer than she had in months. 20 minutes later, Robert emerged with a duffel bag and a box of his belongings. He didn't say goodbye to the baby. He barely looked at Destiny. "I'll be in touch about arrangements," he said vaguely. "Make sure you are," Grandma Rose said. "That baby is your responsibility whether you want him to be or not." Robert got in his truck and drove away without looking back. Destiny watched him go, feeling like she was watching the last 2 years of her life disappear down the street. "You okay, baby girl?" Grandma Rose asked softly. Destiny looked down at Elijah, who was awake now and looking up at her with those big, trusting eyes. She thought about everything she had just lost, her husband, her marriage, the future she had planned. But she also thought about everything she still had, her son, her grandmother, her strength, her freedom to build something better. "I will be," she said, and for the first time all day she meant it. The next few weeks passed in a blur of sleepless nights, doctor appointments, and learning how to care for a newborn while dealing with the aftermath of a shattered marriage. Destiny had moved back into her childhood bedroom at Grandma Rose's house, at least temporarily, while she figured out what to do about the house she and Robert had bought together. The small room felt cramped with all of baby Elijah's things: the crib that Grandma Rose had set up by the window, the changing table that barely fit between the dresser and the bed, and the rocking chair where Destiny spent most of her nights feeding and soothing her son. But despite the tight quarters, there was something comforting about being back in the place where she had felt the safest growing up. Elijah was 3 weeks old now and had settled into something resembling a routine. He was a good baby, alert during the day and only waking twice during the night to eat. When he wasn't sleeping or eating, he would lie on his back and stare at the world around him with wide, curious eyes that seemed to take in everything. "That baby is studying everything like he's preparing for a test," Grandma Rose said one morning as she watched Elijah lying on a blanket on the living room floor, staring intently at the ceiling fan. Destiny managed a small smile. "He gets that from you. You always said I was too curious for my own good when I was little." "Curiosity is a gift," Grandma Rose replied, settling into her favorite armchair with her morning coffee. "It means he's gonna be smart. Gonna ask the right questions when he's older." The mention of the future made Destiny's chest tighten. She had been trying not to think too far ahead, focusing instead on getting through each day. But she knew she couldn't stay in this limbo forever. She needed to make decisions about where she and Elijah were going to live, how she was going to support them, and what kind of life they were going to build together. She had tried calling Robert several times to discuss practical matters: the house, his financial responsibilities to Elijah, when he might want to see his son. But he never answered her calls and he hadn't returned any of her messages. It was like he had decided that by walking away from the house that day, he could walk away from all his obligations as a husband and father. "Any word from that fool?" Grandma Rose asked, as if reading her thoughts. "No. It's like he just disappeared. Good riddance if you ask me. But Grandma, what am I supposed to do? I can't stay here forever taking up your space. And I can't afford the mortgage on that house by myself, not on my marketing coordinator's salary." "First of all," Grandma Rose said firmly, "you're not taking up my space. This is your home and Elijah's home for as long as you need it to be. Second, you're stronger than you think you are. You'll figure it out." "I don't feel strong," Destiny admitted. "I feel like I'm barely holding it together." "Strength isn't about feeling strong all the time, baby girl. It's about keeping going even when you don't feel strong. And that's exactly what you're doing." Before Destiny could respond, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen, hoping it might be Robert, but it was her best friend Tanya calling. "Hey girl," Tanya's warm voice came through the speaker. "How are you holding up?" "I'm surviving," Destiny said, which was about as honest as she could be. "Well, I've got some news that might help with more than just surviving. You remember my cousin Keisha who works at that marketing firm downtown? Well, they just had someone quit and they're looking for someone with your exact experience. The pay is 30% more than what you're making now and they offer excellent benefits." Destiny's heart jumped. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. I already sent them your resume and they want to interview you next week. The position would start in 6 weeks, which would give you time to figure out childcare." For the first time since Robert had walked out, Destiny felt a spark of hope. A better job would mean financial independence. It would mean being able to support herself and Elijah without having to depend on anyone else. "Tanya, I could kiss you right now." "Save the kisses. Just nail the interview and get yourself back on your feet." After they hung up, Destiny felt energized in a way she hadn't in weeks. She spent the rest of the morning researching the company online and preparing for the interview. It felt good to think about something other than her failed marriage and uncertain future. That afternoon, while Elijah was napping, she decided to drive by the house she had shared with Robert. She needed to pick up more of her belongings, and part of her hoped that maybe he had left some indication of how to reach him or what his intentions were regarding their shared responsibilities. The house looked exactly the same from the outside, but when she unlocked the front door and stepped inside, she was hit by how different it felt. It was too quiet, too empty, and it no longer felt like home. Her wedding photos were still on the mantle, but they felt like pictures of strangers now. She was packing some of her professional clothes for the upcoming interview when she heard a car pull into the driveway. Her heart started pounding, thinking it might be Robert, but when she looked out the window, she saw an older black man getting out of a blue sedan. She didn't recognize him, but something about his purposeful walk toward the front door made her nervous. When the doorbell rang, she debated whether to answer it. Finally, curiosity won out. "Can I help you?" she asked through the door. "Ma'am, my name is James Crawford. I'm a private investigator. I'm looking for Robert Thompson." Destiny's stomach dropped. A private investigator looking for her estranged husband couldn't be good news. "He doesn't live here anymore," she said carefully. "Are you Mrs. Thompson?" "Yes." "Ma'am, I wonder if I could speak with you for a few minutes. It's regarding some financial matters that might affect you as well." Against her better judgment, Destiny opened the door. Mr. Crawford was a distinguished-looking man in his 60s with kind eyes and a professional demeanor that somehow made her trust him. "What kind of financial matters?" she asked. "Ma'am, it appears that your husband has been involved in some questionable business dealings. There are several creditors looking for him, and there's a possibility that assets in both your names could be affected." The world seemed to tilt again. What kind of questionable business dealings? Without going into too much detail, it involves some contracts at his construction company that weren't properly handled. Money that should have been paid to subcontractors wasn't, and there are some legal issues as a result. Destiny sank onto the porch step, suddenly feeling weak. How much money are we talking about? Potentially significant amounts. "Ma'am, I have to advise you that you might want to consult with a lawyer about protecting yourself and your assets." After Mr. Crawford left, Destiny sat on the porch for a long time, trying to process this new information. It wasn't enough that Robert had abandoned his family. Apparently, he had also been involved in some kind of business scandal that could affect her financially. When she finally drove back to Grandma Rose's house, she felt like she was drowning all over again. But as soon as she walked through the door and heard Elijah's soft coos from the living room, something inside her hardened with determination. "Everything okay, baby?" Grandma Rose asked, noting her expression. "No, it's not okay," Destiny said, picking up her son and holding him close. "But it's going to be." She told her grandmother about the private investigator and the potential financial problems. Grandma Rose listened with a grim expression, shaking her head. "That man just keeps finding new ways to disappoint," she said. "But you know what? This might be the push you needed." "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe it's time to stop waiting for Robert to do right by you and Elijah. Maybe it's time to take control of your own life completely. File for divorce, protect your assets, get that new job, and build the life you want without him." Destiny looked down at Elijah, who was staring up at her with those trusting eyes. Her son deserved a mother who was strong, independent, and unafraid to fight for their future. "You're right," she said. "It's time to stop being a victim and start being a fighter." That evening, she made a list of everything she needed to do. Call a lawyer, prepare for her job interview, figure out childcare, and start the process of building a new life. It was overwhelming, but for the first time since this whole nightmare began, she felt like she had some control over her destiny. As she rocked Elijah to sleep that night, she whispered to him, "It's going to be hard, little man, but we're going to be okay. Mama's going to make sure of that." And for the first time, she truly believed it. 2 months had passed since Robert walked out, and Destiny's life was finally starting to take shape in ways she never expected. She had gotten the job at the marketing firm, and it was everything Tanya had promised: challenging work, better pay, and colleagues who respected her skills and dedication. The hardest part had been arranging childcare for Elijah, but Grandma Rose had stepped up in a way that brought tears to Destiny's eyes. Her grandmother had volunteered to watch the baby during the day, claiming that retirement was boring anyway and that taking care of her great-grandson was the best job she'd ever had. "That baby is pure sunshine," Grandma Rose said every morning as Destiny prepared to leave for work. "He makes me feel young again." And it was true. Elijah was a happy, alert baby who seemed to bring joy to everyone around him. At 2 months old, he was starting to smile and make little cooing sounds that melted hearts wherever he went. The elderly neighbors on Grandma Rose's street had taken to stopping by just to see him, and he had become something of a celebrity at the local grocery store. The divorce proceedings had been complicated by Robert's continued absence and the financial issues Mr. Crawford had warned her about. Her lawyer, a sharp young woman named Angela Phillips, had managed to protect Destiny from most of the potential fallout from Robert's business troubles, but the process had been stressful and expensive. The good news, Angela had told her during their last meeting, is that since you've been separated for over 60 days and he's shown no interest in maintaining the relationship or supporting his child, we can move forward with the divorce whether he participates or not. Destiny had signed the papers with a mixture of sadness and relief. The marriage she had hoped would last forever was officially over, but she was finally free to move forward with her life. On a crisp October morning, she was getting ready for work when her phone rang. The number wasn't familiar, but something made her answer. "Hello, Destiny? This is Candace." Destiny's blood ran cold. She recognized the name immediately. This was the woman she had seen leaving her house that day, the woman Robert had been having an affair with. "What do you want?" Destiny asked, her voice carefully controlled. "I need to talk to you. It's about Robert." "I don't have anything to say to you about Robert. Please just hear me out. I know you probably hate me and I understand why, but there are things you need to know." Against her better judgment, Destiny found herself curious. "What things? Can we meet somewhere? Just for a few minutes? I promise I'm not trying to cause trouble. Actually, I'm trying to prevent it." An hour later, Destiny found herself sitting across from Candace in a small coffee shop downtown. Up close, the woman looked tired and worried, not at all like the confident person she had seemed when leaving Destiny's house. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," Candace said nervously. "I know this is weird." "It's something," Destiny replied. "Start talking." Candace took a deep breath. "First, I want you to know that I didn't know Robert was married when I first met him. He told me he was divorced. But you found out eventually." "Yes. And when I did, I ended things. But Robert—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Robert doesn't take no for an answer very well." A chill ran down Destiny's spine. "What do you mean?" "He's been stalking me, Destiny. Calling constantly, showing up at my job, following me home. When I threatened to call the police, he said he would tell them I was lying, that we were in a relationship." Destiny stared at her. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I think he might try to come back to you when he realizes I'm serious about staying away from him. And I think you need to know what kind of person he really is." The conversation continued for another 30 minutes, with Candace describing a side of Robert that Destiny had never seen: manipulative, aggressive, and unwilling to accept rejection. By the time they parted ways, Destiny's head was spinning with new information and growing concern for her and Elijah's safety. That evening, she shared the conversation with Grandma Rose, who listened with a deepening frown. "That man is showing his true colors," her grandmother said. "And they're ugly colors. Do you think I should be worried? I think you should be prepared. Change the locks on the house if you're planning to move back there. Maybe think about a security system. And definitely let that lawyer of yours know about this." The next few days passed without incident, and Destiny began to think that maybe Candace had been overly dramatic. Robert hadn't tried to contact her in months. Why would he start now? Her answer came on a Thursday evening when she was giving Elijah his bath. Grandma Rose called out from the living room, "Destiny, you might want to come see this." She wrapped Elijah in a towel and carried him to the front window, where her grandmother was peeking through the curtains. Robert's truck was parked across the street and he was sitting inside, staring at the house. "How long has he been there?" Destiny asked, her heart starting to race. "About 10 minutes. Just sitting there watching." As if he sensed their attention, Robert got out of the truck and started walking toward the house. Destiny's first instinct was to hide, but then she looked at Elijah in her arms and felt that familiar surge of protective strength. "Lock the door," she told her grandmother, "and call Angela." Robert knocked on the door, not aggressively but persistently. "Destiny, I know you're in there. I just want to talk." "We have nothing to talk about," Destiny called through the door. "You made your choice when you walked away. I made a mistake. Can't we work this out?" "Robert, I'm calling the police if you don't leave right now." There was silence for a moment, then his voice again, different now, harder. "You can't keep my son from me forever." "Your son?" Destiny's voice rose with anger. "You've never even held him. You didn't want him, remember? I changed my mind." The casual way he said it, as if changing his mind about being a father was like changing his mind about dinner plans, made Destiny's blood boil. "It doesn't work that way, Robert. You can't just show up when it's convenient for you and demand to be part of our lives. We'll see about that." The threat in his voice was unmistakable. Destiny heard his footsteps retreating, and a few minutes later, his truck drove away. Angela arrived within an hour, followed shortly by a police officer who took a report and promised to increase patrols in the neighborhood. Angela explained that while Robert had a legal right to see his child, his behavior was concerning enough to potentially warrant a restraining order. The key is documentation, Angela explained. Every time he contacts you or shows up somewhere, write it down with the time and date. If this escalates, we'll have evidence of a pattern of harassment. That night, Destiny lay awake listening to every sound outside, jumping at car doors slamming and footsteps on the sidewalk. Elijah slept peacefully in his crib beside her bed, completely unaware of the tension that filled the house. The next morning brought unexpected relief in the form of Mr. Jackson, the elderly man who lived next door. He knocked on the door just as Destiny was getting ready to leave for work. "Miss Destiny," he said, tipping his hat politely. "I saw that man bothering you yesterday evening. I want you to know that me and my wife have been keeping an eye on things." Mr. Jackson was in his 70s and walked with a cane, but his eyes were sharp and his voice was strong. He had been Grandma Rose's neighbor for over 20 years, and they had looked out for each other through everything from hurricanes to health scares. "Thank you, Mr. Jackson. That means a lot. I also want you to know that if he comes around again when you're not home, he won't get past me and Rose. We may be old, but we're not helpless." The image of Mr. Jackson and Grandma Rose standing guard over her baby while she was at work brought tears to Destiny's eyes. This was what real family looked like, people who showed up when you needed them, who protected what mattered most. "I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank me. That baby is a blessing to this whole neighborhood. We're all invested in keeping him safe." The week passed without any sign of Robert, and Destiny began to hope that maybe he had gotten the message. She threw herself into her work, quickly proving herself valuable to her new company and earning the respect of her supervisor. Her colleague Tanya had been right about the job being a perfect fit. Destiny was working on marketing campaigns for local businesses, using her creativity and communication skills in ways that felt meaningful. For the first time in years, she felt like she was building something that belonged entirely to her. On Friday evening, she arrived home to find Grandma Rose in the kitchen cooking Elijah's favorite sweet potatoes while he sat in his bouncy seat, babbling happily at the ceiling. "How's my favorite boy?" Destiny asked, scooping him up for a kiss. At 3 months old, Elijah was getting more interactive every day, reaching for toys and responding to voices with delighted squeals. "He's been an angel all day," Grandma Rose said. "But I think he missed his mama." As if to prove the point, Elijah settled contentedly in Destiny's arms and gave her one of his big gummy smiles that made her heart melt every single time. "I got some good news today," Grandma Rose continued, stirring the sweet potatoes. "I talked to Pastor Brown at church, and he said the congregation has been taking up a collection for you and the baby." "Grandma, I can't accept money from the church. It's not charity, baby girl. It's family taking care of family. Pastor Brown said they've raised enough to help you get started in your own place when you're ready." Destiny felt overwhelmed by the generosity of people who barely knew her but cared enough to help. Growing up in Grandma Rose's church, she had seen this kind of community support before, but experiencing it as an adult with a child of her own was different. "I don't deserve all this kindness." "Yes, you do. You deserve every bit of it and more. You're a good mother, a hard worker, and a strong woman. People see that and they want to help you succeed." That weekend, Destiny decided to take Elijah to visit the house she and Robert had shared. She was thinking about moving back in now that she had a steady job and some financial assistance from the church. It would be good for Elijah to have his own nursery, and the mortgage payments would be manageable with her new salary. The house felt different this time, less haunted by memories and more like a blank canvas waiting for new ones. She walked through the rooms imagining how she would redecorate, what changes she would make to turn it into a home that reflected her values and dreams rather than the compromise it had been during her marriage. In what had been Robert's office, she found some papers he had left behind, bills, bank statements, and business documents that might be important for the divorce proceedings. As she gathered them up, one document caught her attention. It was a life insurance policy she didn't know existed, with both her and Robert's names on it. But more importantly, it listed Elijah as the primary beneficiary. Robert might have abandoned his responsibilities as a father, but legally he was still required to maintain this policy for his son's benefit. She made a note to call Angela about it on Monday. Every little bit of financial security would help as she built their new life. That evening, as she was getting ready to leave the house, she heard a car pull into the driveway. Her heart started pounding, expecting to see Robert's truck, but instead she saw a police car. Officer Williams, the same policeman who had taken the report about Robert's harassment, got out and walked to the front door. "Mrs. Thompson? I wanted to update you on the situation with your husband. Did something happen? We located him. He's been arrested on charges related to those business dealings the private investigator mentioned. It looks like he won't be bothering you for a while. The relief that washed over Destiny was so intense it made her knees weak. She had been carrying the tension of waiting for Robert's next move for weeks, and suddenly that weight was lifted. How long will he be? Hard to say exactly, but these are serious charges. Fraud, embezzlement, failure to pay workers. Even if he makes bail, he'll have other things to worry about besides harassing you. After Officer Williams left, Destiny sat in her car for a long time processing the news. Part of her felt vindicated. Her instincts about Robert's strange behavior had been correct. But mostly she just felt free. When she got back to Grandma Rose's house, she found her grandmother waiting with a knowing smile. "Good news?" Grandma Rose asked. "The best," Destiny replied, picking up Elijah and spinning around the living room with him. "We're free, baby boy. We're finally free." That night she made plans. Real plans for the future. She would move back into the house within the month. She would redecorate Elijah's nursery with bright colors and cheerful decorations. She would plant a garden in the backyard where he could play when he got older. She would build the life she had always wanted, and she would do it on her own terms. As she rocked Elijah to sleep, she whispered all her dreams to him, dreams of birthday parties in the backyard, bedtime stories in his own room, family dinners at their own table. For the first time since he was born, the future felt bright and full of possibility. "We're going to be more than okay, little man," she told him as his eyes fluttered closed. "We're going to be happy." 6 months later, Destiny stood in the doorway of Elijah's newly decorated nursery, watching her 9-month-old son pull himself up to standing in his crib. The room was nothing like it had been when Robert lived in the house. Gone were the neutral beiges and grays, replaced with cheerful yellows and soft blues, with clouds painted on the ceiling and a mobile of airplanes hanging over the crib. Elijah had grown into a joyful, curious baby with an infectious laugh and an adventurous spirit. He was crawling everywhere now, getting into everything, and had just started pulling himself up on furniture. Destiny couldn't believe how fast he was growing and developing. "Good morning, sunshine," she said, scooping him up for their morning cuddle. Elijah babbled happily and patted her face with his chubby little hands, making her laugh. Their routine had settled into something comfortable and predictable. Grandma Rose still watched Elijah during the day, but now she came to their house instead of the other way around. The arrangement worked perfectly. Elijah got to be in his own space, and Grandma Rose got to help without feeling like they were crowding her home. Destiny's career had taken off in ways she never expected. Her marketing campaigns had been so successful that she had been promoted to senior coordinator, and her boss had hinted at even bigger opportunities on the horizon. She loved the work, loved the challenge, and loved the financial independence it provided. The divorce had been finalized 3 months ago. Robert had eventually signed the papers from jail, where he was serving a 2-year sentence for his business crimes. He had made no effort to contact Destiny or to see Elijah, and honestly she was grateful. Some people weren't meant to be parents, and Robert had proved that beyond any doubt. She had kept the house, taking over the mortgage payments with help from her increased salary and the church fund. Every payment felt like an investment in their future, a step toward complete independence and security. This morning was special, though. Today was Elijah's first Easter, and Destiny had planned a celebration that would mark not just the holiday, but their new beginning as a family of 2. She dressed Elijah in the little blue suit that Grandma Rose had bought him, complete with a tiny bow tie that he immediately tried to eat. He looked so handsome and grown up that Destiny had to take about 50 pictures. "You ready to go see everyone at church?" she asked him, and he clapped his hands as if he understood. The drive to Grandma Rose's church felt different than it used to. A year ago, Destiny had been attending services while pregnant and increasingly worried about her marriage. Now she was a single mother, but she felt stronger and more hopeful than she ever had before. When they arrived at the church, it seemed like half the congregation was waiting to see Elijah in his Easter outfit. He had become something of a mascot for the church community, representing hope and new life in a way that touched everyone who met him. Pastor Brown's sermon was about resurrection and second chances, about how sometimes what looks like an ending is actually a new beginning. Destiny held Elijah on her lap and felt like the words were meant specifically for her. After the service, there was an Easter egg hunt for the children, and even though Elijah was too young to participate, everyone made a fuss over him anyway. Mrs. Patterson, who ran the children's ministry, had even hidden a special plastic egg filled with baby crackers just for him. "This baby is going to be spoiled rotten," Tanya said, appearing at Destiny's side with her own 2-year-old daughter in tow. "He deserves to be spoiled a little," Destiny replied, watching as Elijah tried to figure out how to get the crackers out of the plastic egg. You both do. Look at you, you're glowing. This single motherhood thing suits you. It was true. Despite the challenges and the occasional loneliness, Destiny had never felt more like herself. She was making her own decisions, creating her own traditions, building her own life. It was scary sometimes, but it was also exhilarating. That afternoon, back at home, she spread a blanket in the backyard and had their own little Easter celebration. She had filled plastic eggs with Cheerios and small toys for Elijah to find, and he delighted in crawling around the yard, grabbing the colorful eggs and examining them with intense concentration. Grandma Rose had come over with the Easter basket filled with board books and soft toys, and she sat on the blanket helping Elijah explore his gifts. This is perfect, Grandma Rose said, watching Elijah chew on a rubber duck. This is what family looks like. It's not what I planned, Destiny admitted. But you're right. It is perfect. As the afternoon wore on, neighbors began stopping by. Mr. Jackson brought over some vegetables from his garden for Destiny to try. Mrs. Chun from 2 doors down came by with homemade cookies and stayed to chat about babies and gardening. The young couple who lived across the street stopped by to introduce themselves properly and to see if Destiny needed any help with yard work. By evening, Destiny realized that they had created their own community right here in this neighborhood. People who cared about them, who wanted to help, who had become like extended family. It wasn't the life she had planned, but it was better than anything she could have imagined. After Grandma Rose went home and the neighbors had all returned to their own families, Destiny gave Elijah his bath and put him in his pajamas. As she rocked him before bedtime, she thought about everything that had changed in the past year. A year ago, she had been married but lonely, pregnant but unsure, hoping for a future that had turned out to be built on lies. Now she was single but surrounded by love, a mother but discovering her own strength, building a future that was entirely her own creation. You know what, baby boy? She whispered to Elijah as his eyes grew heavy. I think we're exactly where we're supposed to be. Elijah made a soft cooing sound and curled up against her chest, completely trusting and content. In that moment, Destiny felt a peace she had never experienced before. This was what love looked like, not the conditional, complicated love she had shared with Robert, but the pure, unconditional love between a mother and her child. As she put Elijah in his crib and turned on the night light, she made a silent promise to him. She would always protect him, always put him first, always make sure he knew how wanted and loved he was. She would raise him to be strong but kind, independent but caring, confident but humble. She would show him that families come in all shapes and sizes, that love doesn't always look the way people expect it to, and that sometimes the most beautiful beginnings come from the most difficult endings. Standing in the doorway of his nursery, watching her son sleep peacefully in the home they had built together, Destiny felt like the luckiest woman in the world. She had lost a husband, but she had gained so much more: independence, strength, community, and most importantly, the pure joy of being Elijah's mother. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new adventures, new opportunities to grow and learn and build the life they deserved. But tonight they were home, they were safe, they were loved, and they were exactly where they belonged. As Destiny headed to her own room, she caught sight of herself in the hallway mirror. The woman looking back at her was different from the one who had left the hospital 9 months ago, heartbroken and uncertain. This woman had confidence in her eyes, strength in her shoulders, and hope in her smile. This woman was a survivor, a fighter, a mother, and most importantly, she was free. Thank you, she whispered to her reflection, though she wasn't entirely sure who she was thanking. Maybe God, maybe the universe, maybe just herself for having the courage to choose a better life. Whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, she knew she could handle them. She had Elijah, she had Grandma Rose, she had her community, and most importantly, she had herself. And that was enough. That was everything.